What up, witches? It's been a while since I've done a occult book review, but I promise I'm going to start doing them again. We're going to start today with this one. This is Modern Witchcraft and Magic for Beginners. And then underneath that, a guide to traditional and contemporary paths with magical techniques for the beginner witch. And this was written by Lisa Chamberlain, who is an author of quite a few books, if I do say so myself. She has a lot of books out there and available, beginner and otherwise. So this book is essentially supposed to be a guide just to help people understand more about the different sects of witchcraft, the different ideologies, the different terminologies of it. So it's nothing really like this is what I've chosen and so now I'm on my journey to start learning, even though it could be a beginner book to that as well. But it's really just about learning all about the different historical references and the different sects of the parts that you can like branch off into. So one of the things that I really appreciate about this book is how concrete it is. She's very concrete in the knowledge that she gives. She's very fact-based, which is actually what the back of the book says. So it actually says, Modern Witchcraft and Magic was created to provide a fact-based, neutrally oriented context for launching you on your exploration, which is exactly what this book does. What she says she's going to do is what she provides, which I appreciate. Not that it's a bad thing when books give you more than like just the cold hard facts and give you a lot more extra stuff, but for something like this where it's like a beginner guide and people just really want to know, where it's just like, I just want to know, I think this book is great in that, and that she just gives you the information that you need without all the extra bits onto it. And it is just straight neutral. There's no bias in it. It is what it is. It is just the information. I really enjoyed that she goes back historically through all the different practices and through the different parts that witchcraft breaks down into, and just different parts that I hadn't known, like names of covens or names of practices that I had never even heard of before. And this was the first time I heard of them. So if someone is like trying to find a practice, but they're not seeing what they want to see, or they're just not finding what they want, this would be great because it tells you about a bunch of different practices, and maybe the practice that you're looking for is in this book and you got the basic knowledge of it, so then you can go on your way and journey and find more knowledge on it now that you have the name of what you're trying to get. What she's really good at doing in this book is just getting to the core of things, like the questions that people have. She answers them very clearly, very concisely, and very like just concrete. So this book is broken down into 3 parts, and each part is broken down into even smaller parts. But the 3 large parts are Ancient Wisdom in Modern Times, which is part 1, which includes all the history that you might be seeking to know, just any historical facts, anything like that is all in part 1. There's some very brief discussions of witchcraft around the world that doesn't primarily focus on Europe and America, but that's one of the cons that I knew I was going to get into with this book, but I knew it from the beginning, so it's not really a con because I knew that's what it was going to be just based on the book. I knew that it was going to be mostly European lore, and well, not lore, but European craft and American, and then that was just going to be it, with very little hints of other places, because she does get into the Kabbalah a little bit, but we're not going to talk about that. But just like I knew it was just going to be those 2 places, and then that was going to be it. But I knew that was what it was going to be going into the book. So the historical part of it, it's very European based. That part of the book also gets into witchcraft versus religion and things like that. So she gives a wide variety of knowledge within that first part 1, which I really enjoyed, and a lot of history, which I also really enjoyed. A lot of concrete history. I know I keep saying concrete, but a lot of concrete history, because a lot of books, they get into history, but nothing like very factual, like it is what it is. So I like that she does that in this, and like I said, very unbiased, just giving you the facts. Part 2 is Forms of Contemporary Witchcraft, which get into different branches and different breakdowns. This is when you really start to see the different sects of witchcraft, and this is where you start to see the different breakdowns and the difference of like traditional versus Wiccan versus contemporary versus modern, like all the different parts, all the different terminology that people use to explain what type of craft they're doing. And obviously everyone's not going to agree on one term, but this is just broadly what most people agree on when they're a part of those different paths of the craft. Part 3 is Spirituality and Magic in Contemporary Witchcraft. And that's where you get into animism, sacred spaces, deities, spirits, all of that versus each other, the different ways that people use the words, the different ways that different practices use the words, and which ones goes with practices. So she gives a lot of information in that section too about the different paths you can take and what that entails. Obviously, you don't have to follow anything to one path, but she also gets into eclecticism. So she gets into a whole lot in this book. This is also where she gets into like ethics and morals and different types of magic versus another type, what some people think about it, what some people don't think about it, different views on it. I know I said 3 parts, but there's actually 4. And the 4th part is exploring your inner witch. And this is just where she gives a couple of examples of practices that you can do, just very easy exercises that someone can take. Nothing that's too hard, nothing that's too like down one path or another. So it's like really to help you find which path would work for you. And that's another thing that I really like about this book, is very much about finding what works for you and what doesn't. It's very open to all of the different pathways you can take, the different traditions you can do. So it's very open to all of that, which is good, because especially in a beginner book, because some people don't know that they're allowed to do stuff like that. So very good on this. Very good, Lisa. I approve. Another thing that I really liked about this book is how easy it is to get into, how easy it is to read. A lot of the times these reference books, not always the beginner ones, but just in general, occult books just like to use language where you're like, what did I just read? This is not one of those books. It's very easy to read. The language is easy to understand. There's not a lot of like puffiness to it. It's very, I'm going to say it again, it's very concrete. I really like the way that she words things and the way that it's very easy to read. It reads similar to a textbook, but much more interesting, where textbooks just give you the information and the language isn't like, what are you talking about? So I enjoy that, because there are a couple of books where I've had to read them multiple times. I've had to read paragraphs multiple times and I'm like, what did I just read? I don't understand it. This is not one of those books. Very easy to read, very easy to reference back to if you need to look at anything. Just nice and simple. It's also a fast read. It's only 145 pages, I believe. Not a very large book. The text isn't overly large or small, but the book is pretty large. Like the book page is not like a super tiny book. So I still think it's a really easy read. I finished it within like 2 sessions of reading. I think I read some 2 nights ago, and then I finished it up this morning. So very easy and simple to read. Obviously, if you want to draw it out more, that's fine too, but a very easy read. So when it comes to readability, definitely giving this an A+. Plus, when it comes to accessibility, she also has all of her books in audiobook format. So if you need to read a book in audiobook like that, always a good option, because she has all of her books in audio format. As far as having to pick up another book in order to understand this one, because I've had books like that too, where they reference another book so heavily, you have no choice but to read that other book first to understand what they're talking about. She does not do that in this, which is very good. At the end, she does have a lot of references to other books that you can read on different pathways. Actually, let me find this section. Yeah, so she has suggestions for further reading if you decide on like a path that you want to take. So she has suggestions for traditional, for Wicca, for eclecticism, which I think is really cool. And they're not all written by her. I don't think any of the ones in that list are written by her actually. But then she actually has another section of more books that she wrote, and she's written a lot, but yeah. So I like that she has references, like if you need help in finding more books, especially from somebody that you trust, like if you trust this author, then she gives you other books that you can read based on the pathway that you choose. So that's a really cool thing to include in a beginner book. And it also, I don't think I bought this one for myself. I think this was in my wish list, and I believe that somebody bought it for me for my birthday. I think that's what happened last year. Yes, it's taken me that long to get to the book. It's been on my bookshelf for a whole year, but yeah, it's taken me that long to get to it. But I think somebody bought it for me, but I don't believe it was expensive. It had to be somewhere around the $7 to $12-ish, $13 maybe dollars, which is very cheap for a book. I don't think that's too bad. It's when it starts to get into the 20s where I'm like, yeah, we're gonna leave that there. Overall, I think this is a really good book to add to anybody's collection, new or otherwise, because there was a lot of information in here that I had never heard before that I was really interested to hear. There was a lot of history in here that I didn't know about, a lot of different pathways that I didn't know about. So that was very interesting to see this and to be able to read it and easily read it was really nice. Overall, yes, I recommend this book. I think it's a really good beginner book. I think it's a really good any book. Nice to have in your collection. I recommend it. So since I'm going to be doing more of these, I'm just going to go ahead and say the next one that I'm going to do because that'll kind of hold me to it. So the next one I'm going to be doing is this book, which is Root Work. It's using the folk magic of the Black American for money and success. For love, money, and success. This is by Tanya Lee McQuillar. This, I skimmed it. It also looks like a very easy read, so I'm excited to get into this one next. Before I do that, though, I am going to have to do some more Book of Shadows pages, so that will be coming up also. But I am going to be doing more of these occult book reviews because I started it and then stopped and never did any more, but they're coming.